anatomy. Our next speaker is the 8th Vice Chancellor of the University of Nairobi. He holds a doctorate degree in structural biology from the University of Bern, Switzerland, under the mentorship of Professor Peter Gere. He has also been described as a quiet and thoughtful professor. Please join me in welcoming the Vice Chancellor, University of Nairobi, Professor Kiama Gitahi, to make his remarks.
Thank you very much, Joy, for that. I want to begin with acknowledging all of you here today. I remember we met recently with Professor Kirk Schwartz, the president of the Washington State University, and the many discussions we had on how to move forward in partnership. I want also to acknowledge the others who have spoken before me, like Jimmy Smith, as well as Mary Barry and Professor Joroge. This is a good opportunity for me even to make my remarks and to celebrate the launching of this unique lab, the Innovation Lab. It is a great honor and privilege for me and the University of Nairobi to be part of the visionary program, Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health that we are launching today. This program fosters a strong collaboration and the excellence in research, training, and capacity development, which is consistent with the University of Nairobi mission of providing quality education that embodies the aspirations of Kenyans and the global community through the knowledge generation, transmission, and utilization in a manner that connects, inspires, and gives hope to the community. The Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health Interventions focuses on top killer disease for cattle in East, Central, and Southern Africa, the East Coast Fever. Using state-of-the-art technology, the Innovation Lab will develop new vaccines and the diagnostics that help remove the constraints to the growth of the livestock industry in the region, which is occasioned by East Coast fever, and the wealth and malnutrition consequently observed among livestock-dependent families when their livestock are burdened by the diseases. East Coast fever kills 1 million animals in every second in sub-Saharan Africa, claiming over 1 million cattle and occasioning annual losses of about 300 million USDs. The high mortality and morbidity rates compromise the food security situation and livestock productivity, which is a source of livelihood to many communities in this region. More importantly, the Innovation Lab addresses this problem from a multidisciplinary angle, bringing together veterinarians, epidemiologists, molecular biologists, socio-anthropologists, nutritionists, and economists to tackle this problem. I'm delighted that the Innovation Lab aims not only to develop vaccines and diagnostics for animal diseases, but also addresses the challenges of uptake of these innovations by the farmers and the measures how these translate to better household incomes, consumption of nutritious animal-based proteins, and reduces malnutrition among women and children. Allow me, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, to thank the United States government through the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, Bureau for Resilience and Food Security, for their generous support in the establishment and the implementation of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health Program. I would also like to congratulate the faculty at Washington State University and the University of Nairobi, and the scientists at the International Livestock Research Institute, ILRI, and the Kenya Medical Research Institutes, as well as the Kenya Agricultural Livestock Research Organization, KARO, for winning the 6 million competitive grant with an opportunity to grow it to more than 16 million US. This is a laudable accomplishment, which will go a long way in fostering and strengthening our existing collaboration in research, training, and capacity development. A key component of the work of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health is the training of the next generation of animal health researchers through research exposure for undergraduate students and the training of masters, PhD, as well as postdoctoral scientists. Through this program, 10 fully sponsored PhDs will be trained at the various departments and faculties at the University of Nairobi, and the trainees will get additional access and mentorship from renowned scientists at the various collaborating institutions and beyond. The development and equipping of a state-of-art molecular and diagnostic animal health lab at the University of Nairobi School of Veterinary Medicine will have a lasting mark and catalyze sustainable research in the entire region. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the many challenges for the academia and research community has been linking various research initiatives to development and ensuring that research outputs inform policy as well as development. The University of Nairobi is committed to generating high quality research and producing high-skilled and competent researchers and graduates who are equipped with the right skills to produce interventions and innovations to address challenges within our communities. The University of Nairobi is also committed to fostering and strengthening collaborations and partnerships with governments, other universities, local and international research institutions, and industry players in order to generate more impactful research to train and develop the capacity of our future scientists. I note with appreciation that the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health is one such excellent collaboration and partnership that will go a long way in linking research outputs directly to the needs of the community. Universities and research institutions should pay more attention to research activities that have positive impact to the community and provide innovative solutions to the common challenges experienced in our communities. The University of Nairobi pledges to support the implementation of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health through providing a conducive environment for research, training, as well as innovation. The University of Nairobi will continue to grow collaborations and partnerships as a strategic pillar in its growth agenda. Finally, let me thank all the stakeholders and partners who have been involved in supporting the establishment and the implementation of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health and organizing this very, very important launch. Thank you all for listening, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Professor Kiama Gitahi, for reminding us that the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health is one of those steps that will catalyze sustainable research. The high morbidity and mortality caused by East Coast fever compromises food security. I'm sure our goal is to change all this. I'll go back to my story as a farm girl. And as I welcome the next speaker, I want us to note that as household in rural Kenya is not prosperous without a cow. In fact, every other person in rural Kenya today looks forward to waking up to the mooing of their cow, which is definitely a sign of health. I want to welcome Mr. Harry Kimtai, the Principal Secretary, the State Department of Livestock at the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries, and Cooperatives, who definitely, I'm sure, will allude to the fact that a cow in rural Kenya today is a sign of prosperity. Welcome, Mr. Harry Kimtai.
Thank you. Are you able to listen to me? Hello?
Yes, Harry, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you. I had a challenge with my computer, but I think I'm now okay. The President, Washington State University, the Vice Chancellor, University of Nairobi, Professor Kiama, Director General of ILRI, Dr. Jimmy Smith, representative of USAID in DC, representative from USAID Kenya, representatives of the research institutions present here today, development partners, government officials, and research scientists, distinguished guests and participants, good afternoon. As you are aware, our main task this afternoon is to launch the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health, which is one of the 21 innovation labs globally funded by the United States government through the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, Feed the Future initiative. The Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health is a 5-year cooperative agreement funded by the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, Bureau for Resilience and Food Security, with an estimated budget of $6 million, with an opportunity to grow to $16 million that addresses an animal health problem that is deeply constrains the growth of the dairy and beef industry in Kenya and the region as a whole. On behalf of the Kenya government, we thank and appreciate the United States government through her Agency for International Development for their generous support for this innovation lab and many other initiatives in Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health aims to improve the control of East Coast fever, a major impediment to the establishment and growth of cattle in Eastern, Central, and Southern Africa. The impact of this disease to the livestock sector is devastating, with an estimated more than 1 million cattle dying from the disease annually in the region, and substantial losses in beef, milk, and the cost of treatment and control of up to $300 million annually. These losses are particularly enormous for smallholder farmers, negatively impacting on their household nutrition, particularly among women and children, as well as other aspects of household well-being and poverty. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the main challenges in ECF control has been the lack of simple, efficient, and field-based diagnostic tools which can be used at farm level for early detection of the disease and treatment. Additionally, for the control of ECF, the only vaccine available is the infection and treatment, ITM, method, which must be administered alongside an antimicrobial drug, which may lead to antimicrobial resistance, a major health challenge in the world today. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say that luckily, the good news is through this Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health, which is a collaboration between the Washington State University, the University of Nairobi, and the International Livestock Research Institute, and working with the scientists from Kenya Medical Research Institute, KEMRI, and the Kenya Agricultural Livestock Research Organization, KALRO, will develop a field-based diagnostic test for ECF, which can be administered at the cattle shed or boma, making diagnosis for ECF fast and easily available at field level. The latter will help in prompt intervention and treatment of ECF. I am also reliably informed that the Innovation Lab aims to improve the existing ECF infection and treatment method vaccine by removing the need for antibiotic use through technological improvement while administering the vaccine, an innovation which will be a major milestone in the ECF control and in the fight against antimicrobial resistance. These interventions and innovations, together with other human capacity development initiatives and institutional capacity development being undertaken in this innovation lab, will go a long way in addressing the challenges in ECF control and linking research to development. The State Department of Livestock pledges to support the implementation of the Innovation Lab through provision of conducive policies and ensuring the output of the research under Innovation Lab can be upscaled. I appeal to the development partners and all stakeholders to join us in delivering this noble endeavor. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, it is now my pleasure to declare the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health officially launched. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you for that great honor, Mr. Harry Kimutai. He has reminded us about our goal at the launch of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health. We're looking forward to a pen-side diagnosis for ECF, and certainly this program will be a link to research and development. Last week, I had the auspicious honor to visit the University of Nairobi Kabete farm, and I met a farm manager, Mr. Ngesa, who took us through the process of how they take care of the cattle. He narrated a story about how they've had to fight ECF and how it has posed a threat to the cattle on this farm. I want us to take a minute and watch this video. It will certainly explain more about this program, and then it brings in all the elements that we talked about today, and definitely all the institutions that will be taking part in this program.
There's no sound on the video.
Of tick control, either through a curicide application or through treatment of tick-borne diseases, is enormous globally. In country, the annual global losses due to ticks and tick-borne diseases is about $7 billion US. In Africa, and including Kenya, ECF is a major problem. And in terms of mortality, we lose about 1 million calves per year to ECF alone.
So the effect of East Coast fever generally then, if it affects most animals, the repercussions is that the farmers will lose their animals. And if they lose their animals, then we lose the economic benefit of both selling the animals or selling the products of the animals to get income, but also for people who can get employment on those farms and get a salary. And in which case it is a cyclic event in the sense that they could work on the farms, get paid, and still buy the animal products from the same households. The other major effect is that then we have less supply of animal products in the community, because then you are losing more animals and there is not much of animal source foods that are available to the communities.
So the Animal Health Innovation Lab is trying to remove those constraints by developing vaccines against East Coast fever and developing diagnostic tests against the disease, and also training students how to deal with this kind of problems at a PhD level and master's level and also at a graduate level.
The Innovation Lab is very timely because it allows us to do two things. One is it allows us to continue research that we've been carrying out for some time. But the second one, which is more important, is it allows us an opportunity to use more risky but high-end technology research, which has a very good return of investment in case it works.
So the Innovation Lab will bring in facilities that will enable very articulate diagnosis to be done, and the issue of developing methods of control will actually be done very well in a way that the dissemination of knowledge from this particular faculty will easily go into the communities that are dealing with farming.
The students are going to be drawn from different disciplines. 10 PhD students, 6 master's students, 3 postdoc students, and now with a layer of professors on them to guide them to tackle this problem. We believe that will be an army that is required moving forward in addressing infectious diseases in the region.
When we train students as a cohort, there is advantage that there is also cross support among themselves, and when there are specialized skills like learning on research methods, they are trained together, and they also get advantage of being exposed to many mentors who are very renowned scientists and other leading specialists in certain areas as a group together. And also it is cheaper, it's affordable, because they make these farm visits or lab work together jointly, and so there is cost effectiveness also in the use of the resources.
We will be using very high-end research involved in genome editing technologies, both for trying to generate new types of vaccines, but then also for improving the diagnostic tools that we have.
With this project, we have moved into an improvement of the live vaccine using gene editing to attenuate the parasite.
We now have really made good progress around what is referred to as a sub-unit vaccine for East Coast fever. In this case, it's like a small part of the parasite that you use to inject into the animal, and then the animal recognizes that small part cannot make the animal sick, and the animal recognizes that and is able to create defense mechanisms within the body that can fight the parasite.
The procedure of giving the vaccine will also be easier just with one injection. So that is what we are aiming for, a vaccine without the antibiotics.
So because of the current methods of diagnostics for East Coast fever requires sophisticated lab, highly trained personnel, the advantage of developing this pen-site diagnostic test will be that it will be highly sensitive. It will also be simple to use, so farmers that are not trained in molecular biology will be able to use it easily in the field.
We are also addressing the issue of uptake of animal health innovations through researchers that deal with gender, social anthropology, social cultural issues. And obviously, we are also really keen on how improving or removing the constraint of animal health improves the economics of a household. So we have got also economists working within the Innovation Lab.
So sociocultural aspects are very important because they can be barriers or hindrances to adoption if we do not know about them.
It's important that development projects take gender into consideration by being gender responsive. And by this, I mean they should look at the needs of women and men, their different opportunities, and also the constraints they face in adoption of agricultural technologies.
This admission is a great opportunity, first of all, to help the global community by developing a tool that will help local farmers in diagnosing East Coast fever. And then there will be the transfer of knowledge, of which will be an opportunity for me to learn more on diagnostic tools in terms of validating, optimizing them, and also more on parasitic diseases. So this will be a very good opportunity to basically transfer knowledge and also have a translatable tool that will be of benefit to people outside the science community.
The excitement is that farmer who's going to be influenced by our technology, increasing the productivity of the animals, limiting East Coast fever, which causes massive losses. The other benefit that I'm going to have through this PhD is the fact that this PhD is multifaceted. In a way, we are connected, all of us, because we are towards one specific goal, which is improving livelihoods through livestock interventions. For me, it's the village level of impact that the technology is going to have. And I'll feel more fulfilled if it's successful.
Harriet has talked about the impact of this project at the village level. How do we get there? We'll get there through getting an understanding of how the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health will be set up. How will it run? How will we eventually get to the goal and eventually have that impact at the village? To answer this question on how we develop the next generation of animal health researchers, and also how will we set up that molecular and diagnostic lab, I want us to invite Professor Thumbe Mwangi from Washington State University. He is an associate professor at the Paul G. Allen School for Global Animal Health at WSU, and he is also the director of Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health. So let us welcome Professor Thumbe Mwangi.
Okay. Well, I'll begin by thanking the United States government through the United States Agency of International Development for this big commitment to funding the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health, and also recognize the Principal Secretary, the State Department of Livestock, Mr. Hari Kimitai, the USAID Senior Deputy Assistant Administrator of USAID Bureau for Resilience and Food Security, Ms. Maura Barry, my Vice Chancellor, or the WSU President, Dr. Kirk Schulz, and also the Vice Chancellor of the University of Nairobi, Professor Kiama Gitahi, and the Director General of the International Livestock Research Institute, Dr. Jimmy Smith. Well, this lab is about eliminating arguably the top killer disease of cattle in East, Central, and Southern Africa, which is a key constraint to dairy and beef industry. And the premise of the lab is that if you protect cattle health and improve production, this allows individuals, particularly women and children, and households to enjoy higher incomes and better access to nutritious foods, and in fact, better opportunities for livestock for families that keep livestock. I am obviously very fortunate great. I am very fortunate to work with an incredible group of scientists from the 4 key institutions that we have talked about: Washington State University, the International Livestock Research Institute, the Kenya Agricultural Livestock Research Organization, as well as the Kenya Medical Research Institute. And there are 4 really key constraints that we want to address. One is the lack of access of good, efficacious vaccines against East Coast fever, the diagnostic challenges that result in delays in interventions that obviously lead to avoidable morbidity and mortality of cattle, and a limited uptake of available animal health interventions, as well as limitations in good data on the linkages between animal interventions and human nutrition, household livelihoods, and opportunities. We are fortunate not just to have this incredible team of scientists, but also to have a good advisory board that is made up of scientists who have had really good experience working from the lab up to development of products and training of a lot of the graduate students that have gone through their hands. So we do feel as a lab that we're in extremely good hands on this. So the work of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab moves from the lab up to the farm level, and we measure the impact of these interventions on the production of livestock, production of milk, production of meat. But importantly, we look at the actual link to human nutrition, household economics, and welfare. So this Feed the Future Innovation Lab is obviously carefully thought to combine this good laboratory or bench science with excellent field studies to improve uptake of animal health interventions and deliberate measures of impact of interventions on the status of women and children, income of families, and opportunities for people. Rather than spend the next 4 or 5 minutes of my time talking to you about the really interesting science that we'll be doing in this lab, I would actually want to use a personal story of why this is really meaningful for me. So I begin by a picture here of a cow and a man. Now, this man happens to have a name Wambudhia. He is my dad. He has grown, or he brought us up in a small scale farm. We grew up with animals. He keeps not just cattle, but also sheep and chicken, and grows crops. As part of my life growing up in this farm, I have many memories of interactions with livestock. One particular one, I've only come to realize much later after I went to vet school, was really critical, was that our daily duties at home was to go and find all calves that were below 3 months. And we had to palpate behind their ears every single day. And the idea was that there are some things called lymph nodes that just live behind the ears. And once they're infected by the parasite that causes East Coast fever, they end up enlarging. Now, that's a really good sign of an animal that has got East Coast fever. The problem is that if you catch that enlargement a little bit late, after the disease has progressed quite a bit, it's almost impossible to stop death. So in this case, he had discovered along the way that if he was able to see or note lymph nodes enlarging at a very early stage, that he would immediately treat and end up with an animal that would survive. I only did come to learn later when I went to vet school and worked as a graduate fellow at the International Livestock Research Institute, that concept of infection and treatment is actually a vaccine that is in use called the infection and treatment method. I doubt my dad ever read any journals or knew of this kind of thing, but as an observant farmer, he had come to reduce the mortality and morbidity of his animals. I would go on and take a PhD at the University of Edinburgh. And my interest at that point was to look at the entire burden of infectious diseases in the cattle in their first year of life, basically their life history. And what I found out of that is that any animal, and we studied right here in Kenya, that had been born, within its first year of life, it will be exposed to up to and above 50 different pathogens or parasites or infections. And we found out that nearly 1 out of 5 of those calves will not see their first year birthday. So they'll die within their first year of life. And importantly, that East Coast fever was responsible for 40% of those infectious disease deaths. And that if, East Coast fever was combined with other infections like trypanosomiasis or worms, that risk of death would even go higher many more times. And that if you were lucky as a cow, a young cow, and you survived that infection, it was not without some big costs, because the growth of those animals was highly reduced by up to 14% compared to animals that had not been exposed to East Coast fever. So there's absolutely no doubt, and you have given a lot of statistics here about the importance of East Coast fever. And so for me, it's really an important thing that I feel quite connected to this lab, serving as a director, but obviously also as a beneficiary of livestock. And this story is hardly unique for me. I think there are many other people who have grown up with in a smallholder farm and appreciate the importance, of milk. And sometimes a lot of our school fees was actually paid through milk or through the sale of animals. In fact, my colleagues, Johnny Oda and the team, have looked at the vaccination of animals against East Coast fever and found benefits that go beyond just the survival of an animal. And in this study where they are looking at, the Maasai community and those that adopted East Coast fever, they do find that the households that adopted East Coast fever vaccinations ended up even having much more income that allowed, girls to go to school, which was not always common. And the last 8 years as Washington State University, we have been studying these linkages between, animal health and human nutrition. And we can tell from some of our studies that, the access to animal source foods, milk, meat, eggs, really has a big impact on the nutritional status of children and women. Because I'm giving a story here, I have 2 photographs here. One is taken 20 years ago, another one is taken just about last week. The 2 is me in my first year of veterinary school in a white coat. I mean, obviously there are big differences between how I looked then and now. And this other one is taken with my teachers only last week, Professor Gitau and Ngugi Mwangi. And this is in front of the grand entrance of the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Nairobi. I do feel quite connected to this work of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab, because besides, having had personal experiences with living with cattle, I am also back to my university together with colleagues from International Livestock Institute and Washington State University and Kemri and Carol. And we are here to develop the next generation of animal health researchers and provide them with a really good opportunity for them to have good labs where they can work from. And I would like actually to add that when I look back to my journey as a scientist, as a veterinarian and then a scientist, I owe the kind of trajectory I've experienced really to good mentorship. And I connect this to a young man who had returned from the University of Bern in the year 2000, to come and teach us veterinary anatomy. That young man is now our Vice Chancellor at the University of Nairobi. And he got hold of me at a very young first year time and asked me if I knew of what research is, which I had absolutely no idea, and told me that after your vet school, there is actually an opportunity for you to think about becoming a researcher. And I do owe that kind of intervention at a very early time of my career to the good mentorship I got from Professor Kiama Getahi. And he owes me, because after that, I've taken him up Mount Kenya, which is really one of the most beautiful spots here within the country. But it's not just one person, it's a group of people. It's men and women who I have met across the way that have introduced me to their networks of friends and networks of collaborators that I have gotten opportunities that I get. So I do understand when we bring in young researchers like the PhD students that we'll be talking about in a short while, to know that once you get good mentorship and your mentors can expose you to their networks, then there are really big opportunities. And I do think one of the critical things about the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health is this deliberate effort to not only supervise students for their graduate thesis, but also mentor them through to become the next generation of animal health researchers. Okay, so in summary, we are now year 1 of 5 of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health. I feel very excited that we are launching this today. And the goal is quite clear, that we are not only developing vaccines and diagnostics and training the next generation of animal health researchers, but we are going to impact the lives of people that are dependent on livestock for their livelihoods. And with that, I would like to thank you very much, everyone who has attended, inclusive of our chief guests and other guests that have made their really excellent comments. Many thanks.
Thank you, Professor Thombe, for those very kind remarks and also taking us down through the memory lane to appreciate how your upbringing on that small farm in central Kenya has led you to, now work with young researchers. I want to welcome Dr. Vish Nene, who's a co-leader Animal and Human Health program at ILRI. And he will be taking us through what does it take to develop animal vaccines and diagnostic tools. A short brief about Dr. Vish Nene. He has a broad range of interests that converge on developing improved or novel methods of infectious disease control and in the use of whole genome sequence data and genomic technologies to underpin laboratory research, primarily in the field of veterinary vaccines. Welcome, Dr. Vish Nene from ILRI.
Thank you, Joyce. I hope that you can all hear me. Good afternoon to those of you who are in Nairobi, and a very good early morning to those of you who are in the US. It's really a great pleasure for me to say a few words on developing animal vaccines and diagnostic tools at the launch of this USAID Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health. Before I start, I would actually like to apologize for ILRI staff not being physically present at the launch at the Crown Plaza Hotel. I assure you that very much there in spirit, but we're following ILRI COVID safety guidelines, and we very much look forward to hosting one of these future meetings on the ILRI campus when the COVID restrictions are lifted. So this actually launches me into the next part, which is, given the current COVID-19 pandemic situation, I hope I do not have to convince you of the critical importance of vaccines and diagnostics as disease control tools. Vaccines are needed to save lives, be they animal or human lives, and diagnostic tools are needed to detect infection in order to be able to undertake appropriate measure to prevent disease spread, either from a public or veterinary health perspective, and to initiate treatment with drugs if they're available, or vaccination campaigns if vaccines are available. And of course, vaccines can also be used to prevent disease in the first place, which is what this innovation lab will be concentrating on. So as we've heard, a live vaccine called the Infection and Treatment Method of Immunization, or ITM for short, is available for the control of East Coast fever. Now, this vaccine was developed in Kenya many years ago. It is available and it is actually used in Malawi, Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya. However, there are various logistical issues with the production of the ITM vaccine. And although the vaccine works very well, one undesirable aspect of the technical product profile of the vaccine is that it requires use of oxytetracycline, which in these days of antimicrobial resistance is of great concern, as the ITM vaccine may unfortunately help spread of antibiotic resistance. So East Coast fever remains a formidable disease constraint in sub-Saharan Africa and in Kenya, as we've heard from the previous speakers. With climate change, the tick vector that transmits the disease may spread. So any research that contributes to alleviating these constraints will help improve agricultural productivity, smallholder livelihoods, as we've heard, and also help attain some of the sustainable development goals. So under the Innovation Lab for Animal Health, we have some exciting technologies that we will explore to develop novel vaccines and diagnostic tools. So first, as you heard, we will look to replace the use of oxytetracycline by using alternative chemicals. And second, to develop gene editing technology to attenuate the parasite, as you heard from Lucilla, so that no chemicals are needed at all for a live vaccine. Now, the technology behind gene editing can also be used to make very specific and rapid diagnostic tests to help a veterinarian and farmer decide on a course of action. And you heard a little bit about this from Nicholas. And finally, we will also be using protein nanoparticle vaccine technology to develop novel subunit vaccines. These should be cheaper and easier to deploy than the ITM vaccine. Now, these are very ambitious projects, and I would really like to thank USAID for sharing our vision on the technologies and also allowing us to use them in developing novel control methods for East Coast fever. So I want to reiterate that we are using the latest methods in biotechnology in these projects. The details of this, unfortunately, would take quite a long time to explain, and hopefully we will do these in other meetings as a follow-up. But as you heard, we have some very passionate PhD students who will be involved in all of these projects. And so we have a very strong component of teaching, training, and developing capacity to undertake research. And I really look forward to when we and the students will be able to report on results from this exciting research that is being launched today. So I thank you for your attention. And with that, I'll hand you back to Joyce. Thank you.
At the establishment of this lab, one man has the great role of ensuring that the students assimilate to research and get us to a promised land, which is ensuring that the farmer has a pen-side diagnosis and better management of East Coast fever. The Feed the Innovation Lab will develop and improve diagnostic products and vaccines for East Coast fever. It will also strive to integrate socioeconomics to improve adoption of animal health innovations and interventions. And it will also quantify the direct and indirect effects on human nutrition and well-being by setting up a molecular and diagnostic lab for animal health research at the University of Nairobi Veterinary School. Our next speaker will host this lab. I want us to invite Professor George Gitau, who's Faculty of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Nairobi. Karibu.
Thank you very much. Our chief guest and other distinguished guests, especially the heads of the two vice chancellors, and also the Director General of IRRI, and the guests from USID here in Nairobi, and all those who are listening to us from the US and also Kenya. It's a great honor for me to be part of this launch of this Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health. For those who may recall, I was one of the first PhD students who carried out research on the epidemiology of East Coast fever here in Kenya and the Theileria parva infection, which was a project well coordinated by the University of Nairobi and IRI. That time it was called IRAD. And so it's my joy to be involved back into this ECF program again. But this is very different from those old days, that we are having a multidisciplinary approach, and that has been alluded to by the past speakers, where we are having a cohort of students look at the various aspects of East Coast fever, from the current status of epidemiology to the economic impact, the impact of nutrition in the households, and also test the various diagnostic tests and the vaccines that have been developed by the various institutions, especially IRI, for many years. So it is my joy even to share the uniqueness of this project that is having what we can call household approach, that the whole farm approach, where the whole aspect of the family need is being addressed. And we have no doubt that the control of East Coast fever will also transform into improved economic and well-being of the livelihood. So the University of Nairobi is pleased, as the Sola alluded earlier, to host this important innovation lab. I, as the person who is a principal investigator at the University of Nairobi Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, I'm grateful that my department, which is called the Department of Clinical Studies, which also runs the veterinary hospital, both the large animal and the small animal, and has the link producers, that is the farmers, would be very, very privileged to make this milestone of having a capacity to improve the confirmation of diagnosis, not just East Coast fever, but we believe by and large, we shall be able to confirm through molecular techniques and real-time methods the other diseases that are our major constraints to the farmers. I'm very pleased that this partnership involving the Washington State University, International Livestock Research Institute, and the University of Nairobi is going to build the next generation of scientists who are not just thinking in a box, but they'll have ability and capacity to think wide, to look at farmers' needs in a bigger way. And we also believe that the University of Nairobi will help these students to be exposed to as many mentors as possible, as their capacity in a multidisciplinary and diverse ways is going to be built. We believe that as we have set targets and desire to set targets for them, that this cohort is also going to complete even before the 5-year project is over. I also want to take this opportunity for all the partners that have worked with us in the University of Nairobi, and we look forward establishing this lab before the last quarter of the year, and the first experiences, not just by the PhD cohort, but also by our undergraduates who will also be mentored through this lab to elicit interest to become future researchers. As a number of us have shared, that we became researchers, we became professors, we became mentors because somebody who was doing research when we were young undergraduate students motivated us, inspired us, and this is what the Feed the Future Innovation Lab Health is also gearing to do. And on that note, I want to thank you, everybody. God bless you. We look forward to very fruitful results in the near future from this lab. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for those very kind remarks. And also, it's wonderful to have a commitment from you that the PhD cohort will complete their studies and research before the 5-year program. I'm sure that is very delightful news, not only for the students, but also for every partner that's dedicated to ensure that this program is not only comes to an end, but is also successful. We have been talking all afternoon about the students, the researchers, the next generation of young scientists who will be part of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health. And these students are not only sitting under the mango tree, waiting for the mango to fall. They are walking and they're being held by giants in this field. And to introduce the students is Dr. Bukania, Dr. Zipporah Bukania, who's a director for Center of Public Health Research at the Kenya Medical Research Institute. She's also a research scientist and holds the auspicious honor this afternoon of introducing to us the next generation of animal health researchers.
So good afternoon, everyone. Just to reiterate the previous speakers, our gratitude to the President of USAID, Professor Kick, the the Vice Chancellor, University of Nairobi, Professor Kiama, as well as the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture, Mr. Hilary Kimtai. I think it's a pleasure, and we are grateful that we got this support from the most important institutions, and more importantly to USAID for providing the grant. Now, my focus here is on the students, and I think everybody here has mentioned how important it is to build the student career. I want to believe that the students who made their applications for this PhD program must have had an interest, not just to get a PhD, but to excel in the field of science, and more specifically on issues around animal health, and for some, to the extent of its effect on human health. The students are supposed to be 10 PhD students. The ones that I'm going to introduce are 7, because we are still waiting for confirmation of the other 3. But as Professor Kiama mentioned, we do anticipate to have 10 PhD students, all split in the different components of the project. So they're a very special cohort. And I think Harriet mentioned it when she introduced herself during the short documentary, when she mentioned the importance of this particular sort of arrangement for students. You are a cohort, students who will learn from each other's experiences. We always say when you get to a PhD level, you are not just here to learn from the best in the field, but you also bring in your experiences from different perspectives. So it doesn't mean that when you're a student, you are coming in as a pure learner, but we do also expect to learn from you. A number of students have already been in employment and they have practiced quite a bit of what we are going to practice in terms of implementation of the project. So learning is going to be both ways. And so we treat each other at this level as peers to a certain extent, because remember what Professor Kiama and Professor George have just mentioned. They're looking forward to getting a crop of researchers that are going to join in. So it's more of mentorship to get you to a level where if a professor left you behind to run a project, then there's confidence that that project will be implemented as should be. So I have a list of students here, and I'll just give a very brief summary of each particular student's interest. And I'll start with Anne Wamudiru. Anne is a young researcher who has an interest in anthropology and gender perspectives, and that is the area she'll focus in the study. Ethel Webby, her interest is in gene editing and modification, and she has been awarded a grant before where she advanced her research in this area. So she's going to bring in a very wealth of experience to the animal health program, where she'll apply her knowledge on gene editing, but also she will have an opportunity to learn from the experts. Our next student is Gerald Mburu Gijeru. Area of study is PhD in veterinary epidemiology and economics. He is very competitive and dedicated epidemiologist. He has worked in Coast Region, Kwale County, where he helped to set up time reporting disease status that earned them a second best county in Kenya. Our fourth student is Harriet Matilda Omboge, focusing on PhD clinical studies. Her greatest achievement is being one of the privileged PhD fellows to join this particular program of animal health and the Innovation Lab. So she's very enthusiastic and she's looking forward to being part of this particular program. And along that, she has recently been engaged by Washington State University as a research associate. So she also has her level of experience with regards to livestock for health program. This is a different program that has really been ongoing. So she has some experience that she'll carry forward. Our fifth student is Robert Mugambi, and his area of interest is PhD veterinary parasitology. Robert is a young and go-getter researcher for diagnostics. His goal is to eventually arrive at the end goal of this program, which is to have a diagnostic tools for ECF and have them translated into a workable product that the farmer can use with ease. The sixth student is Wycliffe Ngetich. Wycliffe's area of study is PhD clinical studies as well. And with him, he brings wealth of experience and excellence in Animal Health Innovation Lab, as he seems to understand how the morbidity and mortality associated with East Coast fever control and its long-term effect on productivity. In his university training prior to joining for the PhD program, he was awarded the best year 5 veterinary medicine student in 2005. Now, the goals that we are aiming on for this project really, or the outcome at the end of it all, after the 5 years, we would like to see change in the nutritional status and with it, of course, health of the population that will be intervening with the diagnostic tools. And so Hilary Wahungu is a student who is going to take a PhD in applied human nutrition. He's tasked with the role of understanding how ECF affects nutrition at the household level. He will seek to understand how better management of East Coast fever will enhance food security and increase access to animal source food in the household. So we do hope that the additional students will also get to join in within the given grace period so that we have our planned 10 students to take up this program. And so just to reiterate further to the students is that this is an opportunity you probably wouldn't get anywhere easily, where you have a fully funded program. all expenses in terms of your research work taken care of. So really the onus is on you. You have a very wide array of mentors at your disposal. So I think it is up to the students to take up this and run with it. And again, like you've listened to Professor Thumbi's story, where he started from, you have an opportunity to lean on a mentor and have them sail you through your processes. And eventually in future, you probably want to take up some of these areas of interest in terms of research as a career in future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Zipporah Bukania, for throwing the challenge to the young animal health researchers. And I want to take you on a short journey as we come to the end of the launch of this program today, because what we are working towards is a common goal. We're looking at a place where we need to have unity of purpose. We need to have unity of knowledge. And that's what we are doing through the cohort that is going to be trained in the next 5 years. We have unity of variety, which is then reflecting of the various cadres of young researchers that will join this program. This program, the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Animal Health, is the engine that is going to drive us arriving at better diagnostics for the East Coast fever. And if you do not remember anything from our launch today, I want you to remember something. I want you to remember this. This is our ball. This is our situation today. We have a situation where we have a bowl that is perforated. Our milk will not stand in this bowl. And this is where we need to take management of ACF. There are various holes that we need to seal through research, through collaborations, through this lab. As you study, please remember this bowl. We all need to work together to seal the holes. And then eventually the farmer will have a bowl full of milk, and definitely better health for the household, better nutrition, more productivity. As we come to the end of the program, I want to invite Professor Tom Kawola. He's a director of Paul G. Allen School for Global Animal Health at Washington State University. He's an infectious disease microbiologist with research programs focusing on how intracellular bacterial pathogens evade host defenses and thrive and survive in hostile animal host environments. He's a postdoctoral fellow, microbiology, North Carolina State University, and holds a PhD in microbiology and immunology, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. He's as the director of the Allen School, Dr. Kawola strives to build the support, interdisciplinary international training programs, mentoring young scientists, conducting infectious diseases research, and getting to do all these things at a world-class institution, Washington State University. Welcome, Professor Tom Kawola.
Thank you so much, Joy. I trust you can hear me. I think everyone else has been heard. So good afternoon to my colleagues in Nairobi and in Kenya, and good morning to my colleagues here in the US, both on the East Coast and the West Coast. I just want to say a few things. I know it's been a terrific program. And I just want to say, first of all, very rarely am I inspired at 5 in the morning. But I have to say this morning, I've been very inspired. Listening to the speakers today and thinking again about the AHIL program has really just reopened my eyes to some very important things. The two things I've been struck by today. One is the goals of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab are extraordinary, extraordinarily significant. The research through the Innovation Lab has the potential to have extraordinary impact on both animal and human health. The other thing I've been struck by is just the collaborative environment in which this the Feed the Future Lab creates. It just reminds me once again that the whole can be so much better than the individual parts. We have we've been blessed by extraordinary colleagues from the University of Nairobi, from ILRI, from KEMRI, Calro, and in Washington State University to come together in an interdisciplinary way to approach this very, very difficult issue of developing vaccines against East Coast fever and rapid diagnostics for East Coast fever that can be conducted by the animal holders, as you say, pen side. I'm accustomed to hearing bedside, but pen side for this particular work. Our partnerships, I think, one of the things that I'm also struck by is how much quicker we make significant progress when we work together. When we work together in a collaborative environment, when we share information, when we have open discussion between researchers with different disciplines, different backgrounds, and with different experiences, that we inform each other, and each of us become better through working together. And these collaborations can sometimes be difficult. We are separated by distance sometimes, we are separated even just sometimes just down the road. Those barriers, there are barriers to being able to work together. But by breaking down those barriers, we can actually make extraordinary progress in a very short period of time. You know, Vish mentioned COVID. I was hoping to avoid it, but there was something important, I think, there that I think is important to think about. And that is, it's extraordinary how quickly a vaccine was developed for COVID-19. And the reason it was developed so quickly is that people who typically didn't work together did work together. And they shared information, and they taught each other, and they worked side by side in order to develop a vaccine against an emerging problem. And we really have very much the same goals here. This is an issue that East Coast fever has been an issue for quite some time. And I think now we have an opportunity to take the strengths of our different institutions and our different scientists, and often I think we will be led by the students who will break down those barriers and work across disciplines and work together in order to solve these problems. And none of this would be possible without the support from the U.S. Agency for International Development. And I want to thank them for supporting this broad program and this very important work. And without them, we truly would not be able to move with the speed that we would like to move. So thank you for this opportunity to be a small part of this very important work. And I look forward to seeing the outcomes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We are here united for a purpose. And as we come to the end of our program today, I know something about each one of you that joined us for the launch today. I know that we are dedicated to find a solution. And as we come to the end of our launch this evening, I want to appreciate the work of the following institutions. The Washington State University, specifically the Paul G. Allen School for Global Animal Health. I also want to appreciate University of Nairobi, the International Livestock Research Institute, and also the Kenya Medical Research Institute, the Kenya Agricultural Livestock Research Organization, and I also want to appreciate you. Each one of you that joined us today, it was fantastic. I'm sure today we begin a journey that will not end in 5 years, but a journey that will remind us where we began today. Thank you so much for joining the launch today, and I'm sure right now we're really determined to walk together. Thank you so much, and remember this bowl. This is our point of departure. Have a lovely afternoon and have a lovely evening for all our online guests. Thank you.
With the University of Nairobi, the International Livestock Research Institute, the Kenya Medical Research Institute, and the Kenya Agricultural Research Organization.
So the University of Nairobi is going to be involved in establishing an innovation lab. This is the first of its kind in Africa. The University of Nairobi is going to bring on board the rich diversity of academia, drawn from different disciplines.
Cost of take control either